What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So that PlayStation 5 event that we had talked about that was going to be tomorrow has been delayed, but there have been some rumors popping up as to when it could be rescheduled for. We'll be going over all of that, and it turns out it might even be a little larger than we thought, and we kind of know at this point another game that'll be there on top of what appears to be Blue Point's game. And remember that big SEGA announcement? It was going to rile up the games industry. I think we know what it is now. Last night it was seemingly announced, and there should be more information coming out today as well, though it might go over on the second channel depending on what's said there. But all of that and more today, guys. As always, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're brand new here, hit that red subscribe button down below as we head towards 500,000 subscribers. And we are going to start today with WWE 2K22. Yeah, seriously, we're already talking about 2K22 because, of course, 2K21 was just canceled, basically. There's all right, not this year. All right, it didn't work out last year. We had an issue behind the scenes when it comes to developers. We've split them, and we're going to now focus on 2K22 to get it right. Well, on a recent Reddit Ask Me Anything with the developers, some interesting news came up because it makes me a bit more hopeful for 2K22. This is what they said. Core gameplay is one of the major investments we're making in the next installment. One of 6 pillars we are focused on disproportionately in development. We are looking at much loved previous games like No Mercy or SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, along with top franchise installments and more modern wrestling and fighting games to build an all-new philosophical foundation for the game. Now, this is from the new WWE 2K lead, Patrick Gilmore, and hey, I like No Mercy, I like Here Comes the Pain, but it sounds like they're going to be more or less taking inspiration from those games when it comes to the gameplay for 2K22 with a big overhaul of the gameplay, and that's the part that people want to be good. I think as long as it's not all buggy and glitchy and it looks all right. I mean, look, these games already look, I think, good enough, and we're going to have an opportunity to buy this on a PS5 or the next Xbox, and you can play it on PC. So we just want good gameplay. People still go back and play Here Comes the Pain. I actually play that here and there. I still have the PS3 hooked up for it with backwards compatibility. So yes, get the gameplay right, and people will buy 2K again. Well, WWE 2K. We also had an announcement for the first part of the Pokemon DLC, the expansion pass that you may have purchased. You're probably waiting to hear about the first bit of DLC, which is Isle of Armor, and we know when it's coming out now. It's coming out June 17th, and they posted a trailer. It's about 3 minutes or so, kind of going over everything that you would be able to do with areas to explore and new Pokemon forms. In fact, I actually recognize some of them, which is good, because to be honest, I fell out of Pokemon. I picked up Sword and I played it, and I wasn't feeling it as much, but looking at the new forms, which you can see some of them here, were pretty cool because we have a Gigantamax Venusaur, you have a Blastoise, and they also brought in some of the legendary birds from the originals like Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, all getting new forms for the Galar region, which is awesome to see that, by the way. And this is their strategy, of course, now for this installment of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Rather than have a third version of the game, it appears they're going to be doing DLC. Now, this is the first part, and people are expecting the second part that'll come out closer to Christmas time to be even bigger. So you know what? It's looking pretty good so far for the expansion pass. Oh, and here was something pretty random. We've talked about these different retail listings popping up as we get closer to when E3 would have been. We'll check this out. This is from Nibble on Twitter, who spotted one for Prey VR for the PlayStation VR. Now, Prey, of course, from Bethesda, is a very strange game when you start playing it. It really does. It kind of messes with you a little bit, but I really liked it. And seeing the possibility of it as a VR game makes sense. To be honest, I think playing through that would be really interesting, especially since there is an element even of hide and seek with some of the enemies just turning into random objects in the room, and that would be kind of strange to walk around with in VR and unsure of what around you is an enemy that's disguised as just a regular item, and you have to figure it out. And there's some of the scenes and set pieces in that game would be really, really cool in VR. So I hope this is legit. We'll see, but this could be an announcement from Bethesda at some point in June. They say they'll just do announcements pretty much throughout the rest of this year, and we'll see if this is one of them. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the PlayStation 5 event. Yes, it was postponed. It's Wednesday now, so it's older news, I guess, but this is the first opportunity to really go over it in Newswave. And we're gonna just go ahead and just go right to their tweet here. They put this out, Sony did, and this is what they said. We have decided to postpone the PlayStation 5 event scheduled for June 4th. While we understand gamers worldwide are excited to see PlayStation 5 games, we do not feel that right now is a time for celebration, and for now we want to stand back and allow more important voices to be heard. That, of course, was retweeted and liked all over the place on Twitter. For the most part, people understood. Now, I looked at this as well as I think everyone else, and yes, there was disappointment immediately, right? It's that knee-jerk reaction of, oh, man, we almost saw PS5 games, right? But I think pretty quickly, most of us said, okay, I understand, right? There was understanding pretty quickly after that. And if you really think about it, Sony probably doesn't want to show up tomorrow and say, hey, everyone, look at us. Well, we got PS5 games here. Yeah. For their side, business-wise, branding and all that, they probably don't want to do that. Now, people are wondering, when will they actually have this PS5 event that, by the way, they were hyping up pretty seriously. People were spotting on Twitter that they were just having full-on commercials on ESPN just for this event. Yeah, like that's pretty big. And if you looked on like the TV Guide and everything, it was coming up with like 2.5 hours long. Like we heard it would be over an hour, but there's also the possibility that like the main event would have been an hour and they would have done developer interviews like what they did with the Inside Xbox that they had, where they showed like 30 minutes of gameplay. Well, gameplay for some games. Assassin's Creed had a whole like 30 seconds of gameplay, right? Gameplay and games and trailers. And then they kind of sat down over like Skype and Zoom and stuff and talked to different developers about what we saw. And then we had different developers for Guerrilla Games retweeting and pretty much pointing at this event as if there's something going to be there for them. And yeah, we kind of all figure Horizon Zero Dawn 2 will be there. And a lot of those tweets were pulled down. I think there was a lot of excitement for that. Obviously, they finally get the show we believe to be is Horizon Zero Dawn 2. I still think it could close out the show with Blue Point opening the show with Demon's Souls. I think that could be really neat. And then, of course, a bunch of games in between. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how far Sony decides to push this event, how long they postpone it for. I do think it will be next week, and there's currently a rumor going around right now that seems to originate from 4chan, a random posting there that then made its way to Reddit, but there have been some talks about it actually being semi-accurate. So it looks like right now the rumor is June 12th, but it could also be on the 11th. However, we do have EA's event next week. And if you didn't notice, by the way, the Madden reveal was also postponed, and Cyberpunk, or CD Projekt Red, postponed an event for Cyberpunk as well. So there were a lot of postponements for different events for the gaming space that were supposed to take place this week that were just pushed. So I do think next week, because you have to keep in mind, it's not just first-party games that were going to be there, it's also third-party games, and they have their own roadmap and PR and stuff set up. So there is a lot of stuff in the background that has to be altered and moved around. But there are very important things going on right now in the world. And Sony, I think, made the right move, just overall, just, you know, it, like they say, not a time for celebration right now with everything going on currently. So they wanted to push it and to a later date, and they'll let us know. To be honest, they could even let us know next Monday, maybe Friday. We'll see how things are going then. But I would say at the latest, if they are planning for Friday, maybe Monday or Tuesday, just to let us know about a rescheduled time, because we're already ready to go and prepped. We know that there's a PS5 event coming up pretty soon. So with that in mind, they can actually get a little closer, I think, to the date to tell us. Next up, let's talk about that big SEGA announcement. It was going to rile up the gaming industry, right? Well, here it is. It seems anyway. It's a Game Gear Micro. Yes, that appears to be what it is. This was announced last night. It hit Famitsu. They put the article up kind of as a preview. SEGA launched their site, and probably by the time you're seeing this, more information will have been put out there after this recording. And like I said, we'll follow it up probably later on today with a video on the second channel, just going over all of the details. But what you are seeing appears to be a Game Gear Micro that is palm-sized. I think that would make it probably smaller even than the Game Boy Micro. Game Boy Advance Micro, yeah, it looks like it's even smaller than that. I don't know if it's quite keychain sized, but even that screen is pretty tiny. This is an interesting thing for Sega to do. I mean, I look at it and I say, okay, it doesn't appear like it's a very expensive endeavor for them to do. It's going to come down to how good the thing emulates games, if they have M2 on it, how good the quality of the system is. If they have at games doing it, it's over, right? They have to do what they did with that Sega Mini, which they did a good job with quality-wise. You can't go back to at games for this, not for a handheld with a screen. Whew, that would get ugly. And then, of course, the pricing, game selection. I think people look at the Game Gear and they don't have as fond of memories for the games that were there as opposed to the Sega Genesis or maybe even Master System for some people. Definitely not the Game Boy. Like if Nintendo announced a Game Boy Micro that's like kind of like an all-in-one, plug and play technically system, people would be really, really excited. But a Game Gear Micro, I think that'll be a bit of a harder sell. Now, of course, you won't need 6 AA batteries. At least I don't think you will at this time. We haven't heard. I would hope not. And I don't even know how they'd fit in there anyway. But yes, that appears to be an announcement. It's not really revolutionary. The only way that this could become revolutionary from Sega is if they have more to announce and if they did something crazy like enter the console space again. Because if you think about it, Sega would, at that point, make a lot of their games exclusive, which includes Yakuza, Persona. Oh yeah, a lot of Atlas stuff, right? Would all of a sudden become exclusive to Sega's console. And of course, Sonic. But that's the only thing I think that could truly rile up the industry. Turns out it had nothing to do with the Xbox, which we found out actually Monday night. We found out about that one. So there we are, a Game Gear Micro. Next up, let's move over to the Switch, specifically the Switch and what it is capable of when it's overclocked. We've talked about this before, right? Where Nintendo has the clocks on the Switch lowered pretty far, I would say. We've seen MVG do a lot of videos on this matter where he'll overclock it and all of a sudden things like the resolution or even the frame rate will just become better. And it's just from an overclock. Now, of course, the Switch itself has to remain in that underclock state because, well, it's also a portable system as well as where it's a docked, technically console at that point, but you still have heat restrictions and other things going on inside of that system. It has to be built for both, and they have to keep thermals under control in that manner. But people are already playing around with the Switch when it is overclocked in Borderlands. Check this out. This video came up online, and it shows Contra Network actually taking Borderlands, having a 60 frames per second mod, which allows that frame cap to be removed, so it's basically just uncapped up to 60 frames, and then they overclocked it, and guess what? Borderlands just hits 60 frames per second on the Switch, and it looks pretty good for the most part doing it. Otherwise, it's locked to 30, probably because it's fairly unstable above that. But to me, this shows that the Switch has a lot of potential that is just untapped, and that has to do possibly with the form factor of it currently, or just being held back when it comes to Nintendo and developers, just being a little more conservative with those clock speeds. And it does make me wonder if Nintendo has a plan, as we've kind of talked about before, where they have like a box or like their own version of the PlayStation TV, where you just buy this little box that you put under your TV and it's part of the Switch family. That's become a bit more relevant and possible since we have a Switch that doesn't switch, but then that makes it so it's not portable. But they could do things like add a bigger heatsink, a better fan, and maybe hit those higher frequencies when it comes to clock speed. And maybe things perform better on your TV because for the most part, the portable screen on the Switch hides a lot of flaws that may be there that when you blow it up on a bigger screen, like a 65-inch flat screen or something, become much more noticeable. It's just something to think about here going forward because Nintendo has mentioned that this is a family of systems that they want to kind of put together here. And it's very possible, I think, that they could work in that manner. I don't think they want it to be a Pro or anything really expensive. Maybe like a $200 box that just happens to have a better heatsink that can then hit higher frequencies on their clock speeds. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about, and I'm not even kidding, Fallout 76. It's the game that just cannot get out of its own way. But in Australia, EB Games, of course, sold it like normal when it came out, except there was one problem. It was Fallout 76, and it struggled badly at launch, and people wanted a refund. makes sense. If you take a game home and it doesn't work, you're probably like, well, I'll take it back, I guess. But there was one problem, if you remember, Fallout 76 was basically just a code, and that was it. I thought they also had a disc, but from what I saw, a lot of people were saying they got codes with some of their special editions and all this stuff. But either way, a disc or a code, people want to take it back, but because it's a new game and you open it, they of course didn't want to return it. And because it's an always online game, it doesn't exactly work too well used, but still they wanted to return it, and EB Games seemed to refuse it. But it looks like, as of now, it's been ruled that if you did try to take it back, or if you bought it and you were looking for a refund, you can go get it now. And this was ruled by the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, where EB Games will now undertake to refund consumers for the Fallout 76 game up through November 2019. So if you bought it before then and you wanted to get a refund, you can do that. That's just kind of how bad Fallout 76 is. It got to the point where it's legally required to be refunded in Australia at EB Games. Yes. Didn't turn out too good for Fallout. I'm actually surprised we're still talking about Fallout 76, but they're still pushing forward with it. They're still charging a subscription service for it, which is like, all right. But yeah, there you go. If you're in Australia, you didn't like the game when it came out, but you were stuck with it, yeah, go check everything out. You can actually go to the website and file for apparently a refund for Fallout 76. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Gary saying, another note on the Xenoblade UK sales. We're still supposedly on lockdown over here, so I imagine lots of people will have opted for a digital copy as lots of stores are still shut. I think the overall sales will end up being pretty similar to Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And that is a great point, because the UK sales charts only track physical sales. They don't count digital sales. In fact, the MPD doesn't even count Nintendo's digital sales because they are not shared with them. So it is very possible, as you were saying, despite it selling a little less than Xenoblade Chronicles 2, while still doubling sales of Xenoblade Chronicles when it first came out, yeah, there's a very good possibility people are just inside and they're like, we'll just buy it digitally and download it. It's going to be very interesting when we get the MPD numbers, just see how it did here in the West physically. And then eventually Nintendo will mention, I think, Xenoblade, just to see. I don't think it's going to show up on like their top games, because it has to hit a pretty high milestone of like 5 million sales, 5 million units sold to get up there with like Mario and Zelda and all that. But Xenoblade, if it hits like 2 million, that'd be really good, and I see a lot of people playing it, so it's very possible that this could be another win for Monolith, and maybe it's time to get Xenoblade Chronicles X over to the Switch. Bring them all. Xenoblade Chronicles X, go ahead and just drop it on the Switch. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether there's the PlayStation 5 event being delayed. When do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be next week, or do you think they're going to wait a couple weeks? Maybe it's like the end of this month. Let me know about that. And then you think Horizon Zero Dawn 2 is going to be there. And then this Sega Micro or Game Gear Micro, what do you think about that? Is that a big enough announcement to rile up the games industry? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.